Dear people watching and listening, Assalamu alaikum. Kindly like and share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please support my channel by contributing to my Patreon account so that I can continue making the audiobook series. Start of Part 1 of Chapter 22. The Fourth Invasion of Africa. While in Africa Muslim armies were marching back and forth, battles were being fought and won, continents were being conquered and lost, and a large quantity of blood was being shed. The dimension of the sea was slowly gaining in importance for the expansion of Muslim power. The Muslims were learning the skills of maritime warfare. They were building ships, often with the help of the Copts in Alexandria. Certain individual Arabs showed a flair for the sea, and these individuals were rising in competence and experience as naval captains and admirals. The Muslim naval power in the eastern Mediterranean began to be felt as early as 28 Hijri, 648 or 649 AD, when Caliph Muawiyah conquered Cyprus and levied a tribute upon its people. In the Battle of Asawida in 31 and the Great Battle of Savari in 34 Hijri, 654 or 655 AD, the Romans were met at sea in open battle and decisively beaten. In 46 Hijri, 666 AD, Sicily was raided from the North African coast under orders of Muawiyah bin Hudaj. In 53 Hijri, this has been placed also in 52 and 54. Rhodes was conquered by a naval force under Junada bin Abi Umayyah, and on the orders of Caliph Muawiyah was settled by the Muslims. But 7 years later, upon the death of Muawiyah, his son Yazid ordered the evacuation of the island, and the Muslims abandoned it. In 54 Hijri, 674 AD, Crete was also attacked by Junada and part of it taken, but it was evacuated soon after. This was a good progress indeed, considering the beginnings of Muslim naval power. Their first faltering steps had been replaced by bold strides. The Romans had been driven out of the eastern Mediterranean in spite of having a larger and more experienced navy. The Muslims at sea were like killer sharks playing havoc with the Roman whale. But the purpose of the Muslims in developing a naval force was only to defend Muslim lands and to carry out raids to destroy bases which could be used by the Romans for attack upon Muslim coasts. The real purpose of naval power, which is control of sea communications for strategical and commercial movement, was not grasped by the Muslims, although its application was evident from the operations of the Roman navy. While the Romans could convey a fighting force in days from Europe to North Africa by sea, Muslim troops would march by land from Syria and Arabia, across Egypt and Libya on a 3-month caravan journey to North Africa. By sea, given favorable winds, the journey would not take more than 10 days. However, the Muslims were content with what they had achieved. They had ensured the safety of the eastern coastline, and as long as they could fight Romans and earn merit with Allah, they were happy. The shark was enjoying itself in the eastern Mediterranean. It did not feel a need for venturing into other seas. In Kairouan, Kosaila the Berber settled down to ruling over his newly won empire. The Romans living in Africa gave him their allegiance, and among his subjects were many Muslims too, who were fairly and kindly treated by the Berber monarch. Islam had taken a terrible blow at the tragedy of Tahuza and the subsequent evacuation of North Africa. There was widespread apostasy in the land. Large numbers of Berbers who had accepted Islam at the hands of Uqba and other Muslim generals renounced the new faith and went back to whatever they had believed in before their conversion: Christianity, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, or just paganism. Berbers and Romans rose in vengeance against Islam, and all the once conquered territories became hostile lands, with the exception of a few islands of belief in Caravan and other towns. All the efforts of Uqba, all the blood and sweat spent in the cause of Islam were wasted. If Uqba had lived, this would have not happened, and Uqba would have lived but for Qusayla the Berber. It was all this man's doing. He was an apostate, an infidel, an enemy of Allah, and would no doubt pay for his sins on the day of judgment. Yet, he was a noble chief and a generous prince. He did what he did for the sake of honor, and if in securing vengeance he displayed extreme and unforgiving vindictiveness, there was a quality shared by many brave martial nations of the world, including the Arabs of the time. When honor was satisfied, he acted with magnanimity and tolerance, and imposed no burden of any kind upon the Muslims remaining in his realm. In fact, he guaranteed their safety. His reign, starting in the beginning of 64 Hijri, progressed smoothly. Fortune smiled upon him and bestowed her favors, but she would do so for only 5 years. In Damascus, a new caliph ruled the Muslim world, Abdul Malik, son of Marwan. Marwan was the rogue and embezzler whose story has been narrated in chapter 15. Abdul Malik became caliph in 65 Hijri, that is 685 AD, the year following the fall of Caravan. But for many years he was occupied by internal problems, the biggest one being the existence of a separate caliphate in Mecca under Abdullah bin Zubair, our hero of Subetullah and Susa. It took Abdul Malik a few years to acquire a stronger grip over national affairs before he could turn his attention to the problems of the frontier. Caliph Abdul Malik was a veteran of Africa. He had served under Muawiyah bin Hudaj during Islam's second invasion of Africa and commanded the cavalry detachment which conquered Jalola after Abdullah bin Zubair, now his rival at Mecca, had defeated the Romans at Susa. Abdul Malik knew Africa, and it appears that he thought well of it, because when the elders of the Arabs spoke to him about Africa and asked him to liberate the land and deliver the Muslims of Africa from the hands of Qusayla the accursed, he did not need much persuasion. He would do it. None could be better suited, he said, for taking revenge for the blood of Uqba from the Romans and the Berbers than one who is like him in faith and intelligence. He asked his ministers for advice about the man most suitable for the job of restoring Africa to Islam, and all agreed that the best man was Zuhair bin Qais al-Balawi. The ministers said, "He was a friend of Uqba and knows more than other men of his ways and plans, and he is the first of men desiring vengeance for Uqba." Zuhair bin Qais was like uqbabinnafe in many ways. A devout Muslim, he was passionately eager to fight for Islam and earn merit with Allah, if possible die in the way of Allah. His greatest joy lay in service to Islam. In fact, he was very unworldly man and of a hermetic turn of mind. Simple and frugal in his living, he looked upon this world as a temptation to distract men from the true path. He was acknowledged as one of the most prayerful of men, a prince of the pious, a saint among men, though a very warlike one. Uqba had left him in Caravan to govern Africa when he marched off to fight the enemies of Allah in the Maghrib, and the two never met again. After the tragedy of Tahuza, Zubair did his best to get his men to face the threat posed by Qusayla. But with the loss of spirit caused by the death of Uqba, they deserted him and sought safety in a return to Barqa. He too had to go to Barqa, and here he remained as commander of the garrison, waiting patiently for whatever God had in store for him. After 5 years of waiting and praying, his patience was rewarded. Abdul Malik wrote to him and ordered him to advance to Africa with his cavalry and liberate the Muslims in Caravan. Abdul Malik should have known better. He had served in Africa, seen the vast geographical scale of the continent, the immense population of Berbers who would come like swarms of hornets against intruders. Zohair could hardly reconquer Africa with a few regiments of cavalry, and he had to write to the Caliph to remind him of the great strength of Berbers and Romans serving under Qusayla bin Lamzam. In response to Zuhair's request, Abdul Malik sent a large force of cavalry and infantry from Syria, well equipped with weapons and materials of war. This was in 69 Hijri, 688 to 689 AD. Zuhair set off from Barqa to conquer Africa once again. He left no garrison in Barqa, which was a regrettable omission, but he felt that to conquer Africa against such opposition as he knew would face him, he would have to throw every available man into battle. Upon coming to know of the advance of the Muslims towards Africa, Qusayla put together a large number of Berbers with a few Roman contingents, and prepared to defend his realm. He felt no fear at the approach of the Muslims, in spite of the fact that they had beaten him and overawed him in past times. He was confident of victory, especially as his army was 4 times as large as the army of Zuhair. He gathered the chiefs of his clans in a council of war at Kairouan. "I am of the opinion that we should get away from this town," said Qusayla. "In it are Muslims who have an agreement with us, and we will always worry that if we fight near them, the battle will go against us. Instead, we should go to—" Qusayla mentioned a place not intelligibly recorded by historians. Then he went on, "It has water. We have a vast army. If we defeat them and drive them to Tripoli, we will completely wipe them out and the West will be ours till the end of time. And if we are defeated, the hills and forests will be close to us and we can take refuge in them." All present agreed to the proposal. Consequently, the Berber army moved the distance of a day's march from Kairouan towards the west and went into camp near the foothills. With the hills behind them, their rear would be safe against outflanking movements, and in case of a reverse they could disappear in the hilly region, finding safety in its ridges and valleys. Soon after the departure of Qusayla's army, Zuhair arrived at Kairouan. He camped outside the town. For 3 days there was no movement. He neither entered the town nor went after Qusayla. He just rested his men while remaining on guard and finalizing plans for battle. On the 4th day he struck camp and moved west, arriving in the evening near the camp of Qusayla. Zuhair gave orders that the camels be unloaded and tents pitched. There was no going beyond this point, nor going back, until one of the 2 armies had been shattered in battle. We have no knowledge of the exact place where the 2 armies established their respective camps or the location of the battlefield. It was probably at the mouth of Wadi Marwal Bil, near the present village of Fundak al-Uqbi, about 20 miles southwest of Kairouan. It had water as Qusayla said it had. There were hills beyond it, as Qusayla said there were, and as the historians narrate, it was a day's march from Kairouan. End of part 1 of chapter 22.